I wake up to the sound of traffic, the rumble of buses, the screech of tires, the distant honking of impatient horns. My back aches from the hard concrete. The thin blanket I clutched through the night has slipped down, leaving my shoulders bare to the icy morning air. I pull myself up slowly, shivering. People pass by, eyes fixed straight ahead as if I don't exist. Businessmen in pressed suits, mothers with strollers, teenagers with earbuds. I am invisible to them, to the world. Once I had a bed, a roof, a warm cup of coffee waiting on the kitchen table. Once I had children who ran to me when I came home, shouting, "Daddy!" as if I were their whole world. Now I am just another man on the sidewalk, forgotten, discarded like yesterday's trash. The hunger in my stomach is sharp. It's been 2 days since I had a proper meal. I search through the pocket of my worn coat. Nothing but a few coins, barely enough for a stale sandwich. I sigh and lean back against the brick wall behind me. Memories flood in. My old house in New Jersey, the smell of fresh cut grass on a Saturday morning when I mowed the lawn, the laughter of my little girl Emily as she chased bubbles across the yard, my son, David, running to show me the A he got on his math test. Back then I believed life was secure, steady, mine to control. But everything can vanish, and for me, it did. A young couple walks past. The man glances at me for half a second, then quickly looks away. The woman tightens her grip on her purse. To them, I am a threat, a danger. Not a father, not a man with stories, not someone who once provided, just a shadow in their perfect city. I force myself to stand. My legs shake. My shoes are torn at the soles, flapping with every step. I head toward the corner where the bakery tosses its unsold bread. Maybe, just maybe, I'll get lucky. On the way, I pass a billboard. It shows a smiling family around a Thanksgiving table. Turkey, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie. I freeze. My chest tightens. Thanksgiving used to be my favorite day. I can still hear Emily saying grace, her small voice trembling but proud. I can still feel David hugging me after dessert, whispering, "I love you, Dad." But that was before the storm. Before the losses, the debts, the silence. Before they left me. The cold wind bites my face. I lower my head and keep walking. A teenager throws an empty soda can in my direction and laughs. I don't react. I've learned not to. The world already sees me as worthless. Why give them more? At the bakery dumpster, I dig carefully, hoping for something edible. My hands are numb, but I find half a loaf of bread. It's stale, but it's food. I tear off a piece and chew slowly, pretending it's fresh, pretending it's enough. As I eat, I whisper to myself, how did it come to this? I know the answer, and soon I will tell it. Before the cold sidewalk, there was warm light, morning sun spilling through white curtains, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen, the hiss of bacon in the pan, the clatter of ceramic mugs on our maple table. I used to wake up early and stand at the bedroom window just to watch the neighborhood come alive. Sprinklers ticking on perfect lawns, school buses sighing at the corner, joggers waving as they passed. Back then, I felt steady, rooted, like life had chosen me for once. I owned a small remodeling business in Trenton. Nothing flashy, kitchens, bathrooms, porches. I knew every lumber supplier by name, every customer by their favorite tile. My hands built things that lasted, cabinet doors that hung straight, steps that didn't wobble. People trusted me. When I gave a timeline, I kept it. When I promised a price, I honored it. My kids believed their father could fix anything with a tape measure and a pencil behind his ear. Emily loved to twirl in the sawdust when she visited the shop, pretending she was dancing in snow. David liked to push the shop broom, sweeping a path straight and narrow. Their mother, Laura, would bring lemonade in tall glasses with ice knocking around like tiny bells. She'd wipe a smudge of drywall mud off my cheek and smile like she could see our future, clean and bright. We weren't rich, but we were good. We were enough. Saturdays were for Home Depot and pancakes. Grocery runs to ShopRite on Sundays. We kept a jar for family trips, a big mason jar with beach written in Sharpie. Every week, the kids would drop spare change and shout, "Shin City," like it was a magic spell. One July we made it. Boardwalk fries, sticky fingers, a horizon that looked like forever. Emily picked a pink kite and it soared, just like she promised it would, right out over the surf. David teased her that the kite would fly all the way to Spain. She told him Spain wasn't on the ocean like that, and he shrugged and said, "Dad knows." And I did. Back then, I knew everything. Or I thought I did. The first hairline crack didn't look like disaster. A gentle slowdown. A customer postponed a bathroom gut to next quarter. Another needed to wait on a bonus. I told Laura it was seasonal. Every contractor has slow months. We tightened belts. I cut my own draws. We used up the gift cards in the junk drawer. December came with fewer calls. January came with none. Then the credit lines I used to float materials got jumpy. Interest rates had crept up, and suddenly carrying costs bit like dogs that had been pretending to sleep. I told myself spring would fix it. Spring brings kitchens. Spring brings decks. Spring brings calls. But spring brought rain. Projects slipped. A supplier demanded cash on delivery. I swallowed my pride and asked him for 30 days. He said he'd always liked me, but he had his own people to feed. I nodded like I understood, because I did. I always have. The dignity of men who build and the danger of numbers that don't. I took a commercial job out in Hamilton that looked like a lifeline, a salon billed out with a tight schedule and a bigger check at the end. I underbid to win it. Then the owner changed paint colors twice, upgraded the sink fixtures, added lighting midstream. "Small changes," she said, each one cutting my margin to bone. I kept smiling. I kept accommodating. When the final payment came, it was short. "We never agreed to those extras," she wrote, signing with a flourish that looked like a whip crack. I considered small claims court. I considered showing up and demanding fairness. But I was tired. You can't fight every storm. Not when another is already on the horizon. We sold the pickup to make a mortgage payment. I told the kids I wanted to downsize to something with better mileage. But David knew. He ran his fingers along the dent on the rear bumper where he'd once scribbled his initials in the dust. "Are we okay?" he asked. I said yes. I said it the way fathers do. Like yes can rearrange the universe if you say it hard enough. The phone calls changed tone from "Can you start next week?" to "We're going with someone cheaper." From "Loved your portfolio" to no reply at all. At night, Laura sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of envelopes. PSE&G, mortgage, insurance. She didn't nag. She didn't accuse. She just stared at the numbers like they were a foreign language she used to speak and had forgotten. I kissed the top of her head and told her I had it handled. She nodded and kept punching buttons. All those lovely, ordinary sounds, plastic keys, sliding paper, started to sound like warning sirens. The day the bank letter came, the envelope looked innocent. White, clean, official in a way that makes you straighten your back. "Past due." 2 words with teeth. I called. I explained. The woman on the line had a soft voice that made hard things gentler, but not different. "We can offer a temporary plan," she said, "if you can bring this amount current." The amount current was a cliff. I told her I'd try to. I told myself I'd sell tools before I sold the kitchen table. Tools were identity. A table is just wood. I took night jobs, odd tasks at a motel off Route 1, patching drywall in rooms that smelled like cigarettes and disinfectant. The manager paid in cash, folded tight in his palm like a secret. I hid the money in a coffee can in the garage, behind the paint cans from projects I never finished. I told the kids we'd still go to the beach jar when things lightened up. They didn't ask when. Children understand timelines written in love, not calendars. But love loses to math when math gets loud. One evening, Emily came home from a friend's house with a flyer for a school trip. DC, monuments, a museum sleepover. The cost was circled in pink highlighter. "Everyone's going," she said, trying to make it sound like information instead of a wish. I stared at the number and told her, "We'll see." She nodded, brave and bright, and pinned the flyer on the fridge next to a photo of us on the boardwalk, mouths open in laughter. I learned that night that silence can be heavier than shouting. The words you don't say press down until breathing feels like a job. We canceled cable, cut groceries to the bone. I sold the nail guns and kept one hammer. I told myself a real carpenter only needs a hammer and a square and a steady eye. The mortgage fell behind again. The woman on the phone had the same soft voice. "I'm sorry," she said. "I truly am." I told her I believed her. That didn't change the plan. The day I realized the floor had fallen away wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors, no broken plates, just a thin letter, a thin line of text, a thin feeling in my chest. Notice of foreclosure proceedings. Outside, a neighbor's sprinkler ticked its rhythm like nothing had changed. Someone laughed 2 houses down. A dog barked at a squirrel. I sat at the kitchen table and watched the late sun lay gold across the bills. Laura stood in the doorway with her arms folded like she was holding herself together. "We'll figure it out," she said, a phrase that had always been true. I nodded because what else do you do when the ground decides it's tired of holding you? That night I couldn't sleep. I walked the house like a guard on a ship that had already hit the iceberg. I touched the kids' bedroom doors. I stepped into the garage and ran my palm along the workbench, scarred by years of use. Every gouge, a memory. Every stain, a story. In the quiet, a truth rose up and sat across from me. I had built so many rooms for other people to live in. I had forgotten the one room I couldn't afford to lose. This home, this fragile world, held together by ordinary days. When dawn came, I brewed coffee anyway, as if ritual could fix the math. I stood at the window, watched the bus sigh at the corner, heard its doors whoosh open. My children climbed aboard. They waved. I waved back. The sun made the kitchen shine like we were still in a life that belonged to us. For a moment, it felt true. For one more morning, it almost was. The first cracks were whispers, late-night phone calls from creditors, their voices polite but sharp, asking for payments I didn't have. I'd hang up, rub my temples, and tell Laura it was just business stuff. She'd nod, though her eyes said she knew better. Silence stretched between us more often now, heavy and restless, like a storm cloud hovering just out of sight. Jobs trickled in, but everyone came with strings. Clients nitpicked, payments lagged, material costs soared. A kitchen remodel I thought would save us turned into a nightmare of delays and excuses. I poured every ounce of energy into keeping the business afloat, but no matter how many hours I worked, the numbers still screamed louder. The kids began to notice. Emily's birthday came around, and instead of the party she dreamed of, we had cake at home with dollar store candles. She smiled, brave and sweet, but when she leaned in to blow out the flames, I saw her eyes shimmer. I knew her wish wasn't for toys. It was for things to go back to how they used to be. David grew quieter. He'd sit at the kitchen table with his homework spread out, chewing on the end of his pencil, but his gaze would drift to me. "Are we okay, Dad?" he asked one evening, his voice small. I told him yes. Fathers say yes even when the ground is falling away. But the words caught in my throat. He didn't look convinced. The mortgage letters piled higher. Red ink stamped across envelopes. Final notice. Immediate action required. Words that clawed at me in the dark. I'd hide them in the garage under piles of old invoices, but Laura found them eventually. She didn't yell. She just stared, then turned away, her shoulders slumped as if carrying invisible bricks. The fight started small, over grocery bills, over gas money. Then they grew sharper. "You promised stability," she whispered one night, her voice trembling with anger she was trying to contain. I wanted to scream that I never promised the world wouldn't crumble beneath us. I only promised to fight for us. But promises are meaningless when the fridge is half empty. I took side jobs, painting fences, hauling junk, fixing gutters for neighbors who paid in crumpled 20s. I came home late, hands blistered, back screaming. I'd collapse on the couch only to hear Laura pacing upstairs. I knew she was calculating, cutting, planning without me. Fear had become our language. One evening, I came home to find Emily crying in her room. The lights were off, the posters on her walls casting shadows. She clutched a photo from Ocean City, the kite, the boardwalk fries, her little brother laughing with salt on his cheeks. "I miss this, Dad," she said softly. My heart cracked. I wanted to tell her we'd go back, that the beach jar still had power, but the jar was gone, emptied for groceries months ago. All I could do was hug her and hope my arms still felt like safety. Then came the day the power company shut us off. I came home from a job with sweat dripping down my back, only to find the house dim, fans silent, refrigerator warm. Laura sat at the table, arms crossed, her face pale. "We can't live like this," she said. The kids sat quietly, Emily tracing patterns on the table, David staring at the floor. I told them it was temporary, but even as I said it, I knew the truth. The storm wasn't coming. It was here. I swallowed my pride and went to the bank. I wore my best shirt, ironed and stiff, hoping presentation could outweigh desperation. The loan officer glanced at the papers, tapping her pen. "Your debt-to-income ratio is too high," she said flatly. "We can't approve additional credit." I begged, voice cracking, but her eyes stayed cold. To her, I was just another failing case. To me, she was the gatekeeper of my family's survival. When I walked out, rain pelted the streets, soaking through my shirt. It felt fitting. The world knew I was drowning and decided to help push me under. Laura began packing little things, winter coats, boxes of books, kitchen dishes wrapped in newspaper. She didn't say she was leaving. She didn't have to. Her movement spoke louder than words. The kids watched from the hallway, silent, confused, afraid. The final notice came stapled to the door in bold black print. Foreclosure scheduled. A date stamped like a death sentence. I ripped it down, crumpled it in my fist. But paper doesn't crumble fate. That night I lay awake listening to the house breathe, every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the pipes. This was the place where my children took their first steps, where birthday candles glowed, where Christmas mornings spilled with wrapping paper and joy. Soon it would belong to strangers. Soon my family would scatter like leaves in the wind. I wanted to believe we could weather it together, that even without a house, we'd still be a family. But as I looked at Laura's distant eyes, at the kids shrinking into themselves, I realized storms don't just wash away roofs. They wash away trust, laughter, love. And deep down, I feared the worst, that when the storm passed, I would be left alone. The house felt different that morning, too quiet, too heavy, as if the walls themselves knew what was coming. Sunlight slipped weakly through the blinds, painting pale lines across the living room carpet. I sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee in my hands, staring at the foreclosure notice. Its black letters screamed louder than any argument. Laura came down the stairs, her suitcase thumping with each step. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. Her silence was louder than shouting, sharper than any insult. Emily and David trailed behind her, their backpacks hanging loose on their shoulders. They didn't carry toys, no kites, no beach jars, just the essentials, as if they knew they were never coming back. "Laura," I whispered, my throat raw. "Please, don't do this." She froze for a moment at the bottom of the stairs, her hand tightening around the handle of her suitcase. Then she turned, her eyes red, tired, and full of something colder than anger, resignation. "I can't keep doing this," she said softly. "The kids need stability. They need a future. And I can't give it to them here." Her words hit harder than any storm, harder than any bill collector's threat. She didn't say you can't give it to them. She said I. She had already cut me out of the equation. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She clutched her stuffed bear to her chest, the one she'd had since she was 3. "Do we have to go, Mom?" she asked. Laura smoothed her daughter's hair and whispered, "Yes, baby, we do." David wouldn't meet my gaze. He shifted from foot to foot, his jaw tight. I wanted to tell him it was okay to be scared, that his father would fix it all, but the words tasted like lies. He had already stopped believing in my promises. I stood up, knocking the chair back. "We're a family, but," I said, my voice cracking, "we can face this together. Houses can be replaced, money can be earned again. But if you walk out that door," Laura cut me off, "it's already gone. The house, the money, the trust, all of it." Her voice shook, but her eyes didn't. They were steady, unflinching. The kids shuffled past me, their small shoulders brushing against my arms. Emily glanced up once, just once, and mouthed, "I'm sorry." That single look shattered me more than any foreclosure notice ever could. I followed them to the door, desperate, begging, "Please, Laura, don't take them. Don't let them forget me." She paused with her hand on the knob. For a moment, I thought she might break, that she might drop the suitcase and fall into my arms. But instead, she whispered, "Goodbye." The door opened. Bright daylight flooded in. And then they were gone. I stood in the doorway, the silence rushing in behind them like a wave. The house, once filled with laughter and chaos, was suddenly hollow. Every picture frame on the wall mocked me. Smiling faces, happy vacations, Christmas mornings now reduced to ghosts. I wandered through the rooms like a man in a museum of his own life. Emily's room smelled faintly of bubblegum and crayons. Her bed was neatly made, the pink quilt smoothed flat, as if she had wanted to leave no trace. David's desk was empty except for a broken pencil, snapped clean in half. Maybe he'd left it behind as a message, a silent protest, or maybe just proof that not everything could be carried away. In the garage, the workbench still held scraps of wood from my last unfinished project. I picked up a piece, ran my hand over the grain, and thought of all the promises I'd built with these hands, promises that had splintered just like this scrap. The hours dragged by. I sat in the living room listening to the refrigerator hum, the clock tick, the wind rattle the windows. Every sound seemed amplified in the emptiness. I whispered their names just to hear something human. Laura, Emily, David. The walls swallowed the words, giving nothing back. That night, I couldn't bear the bed. It felt too big, too empty. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment that led here. The missed payments, the broken promises, the look in Laura's eyes when she said goodbye. I told myself it wasn't final, that she might come back. But deep down, I knew. The family I'd built my world around had walked away. Days passed, but the silence never left. No phone calls, no visits, just letters from the bank and the slow encroachment of strangers who would soon claim the house. I tried to call Laura once, but the number had changed. I wrote a letter to Emily and David, but I never knew if they read it. I started talking to the house itself, to the walls and the floorboards. "You remember them," I whispered. "You remember the laughter." But even the house seemed ready to move on, tired of carrying my sorrow. The final blow came when I checked the mailbox and found nothing but bunk flyers and foreclosure updates. No letter from my children. No note saying they missed me. Just silence, heavy and absolute. On the last night in that house, I sat at the kitchen table again, staring at the empty chairs. I thought of Emily's whispered "I'm sorry" and David's silent eyes. I wondered if they already considered me a memory, someone they once knew but had outgrown. When the movers arrived the next morning, I didn't fight. I packed what little I could, some clothes, a few tools, the old photo from Ocean City. As I stepped outside, the house loomed behind me, stripped of life. I closed the door for the last time, and the sound echoed like a coffin lid sealing shut. The house was gone, the family gone, the life I knew gone. All that remained was the weight of a duffel bag slung over my shoulder and the echo of the door closing behind me. For years, that door had been the line between safety and the chaos of the world. Now, stepping past it felt like walking off the edge of the earth. I wandered through town aimlessly, the streets too bright, the faces too hurried. People brushed past, carrying bags of groceries, laughing into phones, complaining about traffic. They were living in a rhythm I no longer belonged to. My rhythm was silence, loss, a heartbeat pounding too fast in my ears. By dusk, the sidewalks had cooled, shadows stretching long across storefronts. I had nowhere to go. Friends I once helped with renovations didn't answer calls anymore. My brother, living across the state, had sent one sharp text months ago. "I can't keep bailing you out." And Laura, well, Laura had chosen her silence. So I walked. Past the grocery store where Emily once begged for candy, past the playground where David learned to swing high enough to make Laura gasp, past every corner that used to mean something and now mocked me with memories. As night fell, I felt the weight of not having a key in my pocket. No door to unlock, no bed waiting, just pavement and the gnawing question of where to rest. I ended up behind a strip mall where the hum of an old air conditioner filled the dark. I sat down, my back against the wall, the duffel bag serving as a pillow. The concrete was cold, rough against my skin. I pulled my jacket tight, but the chill seeped in anyway, biting at my bones. The sounds of the night were unfamiliar. Dumpsters clanging, distant sirens, laughter from a bar down the street. I used to fall asleep to the hum of our fridge, the creak of the house settling, the soft murmur of Laura reading upstairs. Now every sound felt like a warning. I tried closing my eyes, but the darkness was alive. Every shadow moved, every footstep made me tense. A group of teenagers passed by, their sneakers slapping the pavement. One of them pointed at me and laughed. "Look at the bum," he shouted. His friends laughed too, their voices echoing in the empty lot. My stomach tightened, but I stayed still, pretending not to hear. Fighting back would only make me more of a spectacle. Hours crawled, the cold sank deeper. Hunger gnawed harder. I tore open the stale bread I had saved from the bakery dumpster and ate it piece by piece, chewing slowly as if that could trick my stomach into feeling full. Each bite tasted like shame. I thought about the meals I used to share with my family. Pancakes on Saturday mornings, pizza nights on Fridays. I wondered if Emily and David were eating dinner somewhere warm at that very moment, their laughter filling someone else's home. At some point, exhaustion overpowered fear. I drifted in and out of shallow sleep, jerking awake at every noise. A bottle shattered somewhere nearby. A car alarm wailed, then cut off. Each time I'd sit up, heart racing, until silence returned. Sleep became a series of jolts, not rest. The hours between midnight and dawn stretched endlessly. The concrete sucked the warmth from my body, leaving me stiff and shivering. My breath hung in the air like smoke. I pulled my jacket tighter, wishing for blankets, wishing for anything. My mind kept replaying the image of Emily clutching her bear, David looking away, Laura whispering goodbye. The ache in my chest was heavier than the cold. When dawn finally crept in, the sky bruised purple and gray, I sat up and watched the world wake. Delivery trucks rumbled past, workers with coffee cups hurried to jobs. For them, it was another Monday. For me, it was proof that I had survived one night. Just one. I stood, legs aching, back stiff. My clothes were damp with dew. I walked toward a gas station, hoping to use the restroom sink to wash my face to feel human again. The attendant eyed me suspiciously but said nothing. The mirror above the sink didn't lie. My hair was matted, my skin pale, eyes bloodshot. I hardly recognized the man staring back. I splashed water on my face, trying to wash away the shame clinging to me like dirt. But water can't clean what's inside. It can't erase the sound of your children walking away or the hollow feeling of knowing you have no place in the world. Outside, I sat on the curb, watching cars line up for gas, families heading to school, workers heading to offices. I wanted to shout, "I used to be you. I used to have what you have." But no one would listen. No one believes the sidewalk when it speaks. That first night broke something in me. Not just the comfort of a bed, but the illusion that I could claw my way back easily. It was the night I realized I was no longer a man with a home. I was a man without. And that absence would follow me day after day, night after night. Daylight doesn't bring relief when you're on the streets. It just makes your failures more visible. The first night outside stripped away my illusions. The first day made me realize something worse. In the eyes of the world, I no longer existed. I walked the sidewalks of Trenton with my duffel bag heavy on my shoulder, the straps digging into my skin. People brushed past without looking. Mothers steered their children away. Men in suits glanced down at me, then quickly up again, as if my existence were an inconvenience they could ignore if they didn't meet my eyes. I tried to speak once, to ask a man outside a coffee shop if he could spare $1. He flinched before I finished, muttered, "Sorry, buddy," and turned his back. The word buddy sounded wrong. I wasn't a buddy. I was a shadow, an interruption in his morning. The worst part wasn't hunger. Hunger growls but can be quieted with stale bread or discarded fries. The worst part was invisibility. It wasn't that people hated me, it was that they refused to see me. By noon, I ended up at a park bench downtown. The sun was high, warming the metal under me, but it didn't chase away the chill inside. I watched families stroll by, kids laughing, couples arguing softly, joggers sipping water. I wanted to raise my hand, to shout, "I was one of you once," but the words stuck. What good is a truth no one believes? A mother walked past with two children. The boy had David's same messy hair. The girl clutched a teddy bear like Emily's. My throat tightened. For a moment, I let myself pretend they were mine, that they would spot me, smile, run into my arms. Instead, the boy pointed and whispered something. The mother scowled, pulled them closer, and hurried on. To them, I wasn't a father. I was a warning. I lowered my head and stayed on the bench. Minutes bled into hours. At one point, I thought I heard my name. Dad? The word cut through the noise of traffic and laughter. My heart jolted. I lifted my head quickly, scanning the crowd. For half a second, I swore I saw Emily's face. Her same blue eyes, her same small frame. But when I blinked, it was only another child holding another man's hand. The ache in my chest was unbearable. My children were out there, somewhere in the same town, maybe even the same street, but they might as well have been across an ocean. And if they did see me, would they even recognize me? Or worse, would they recognize me and look away? By evening, I wandered to the public library hoping for warmth. Inside, the air smelled of old pages and disinfectant. Students hunched over laptops, children whispered in the corner. I sat at a table pretending to read an abandoned newspaper. The words blurred. My eyes weren't on the print, they were on the clock above the desk, counting down to closing time. A librarian approached, her voice polite but firm. "Sir, the library will be closing in 10 minutes. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She didn't ask where I would go. She didn't want to know. Back outside, darkness returned. Streetlights flickered on, casting yellow pools on the sidewalk. I found myself near a fast food restaurant, the smell of fries drifting out. My stomach clenched. I hovered by the door, hoping someone would leave a bag half full. A young man tossed his tray into the bin, fries spilling out. I grabbed them the moment he walked away. The salt burned my dry lips, but I ate every bite. That night, I tried sleeping on another bench. The air was colder than before. My jacket was thin, my body sore. Around midnight, I woke to footsteps. Two men stood nearby, their voices low. One nudged my bag with his foot. "Got anything in there?" one asked. I sat up quickly, clutching the strap. "Just clothes," I muttered. They laughed, a cruel sound. "Relax, old man, we don't need your junk." They walked off, their laughter echoing. I waited until they were gone before I lay back down, heart pounding. On the streets, everything is a threat, even laughter. When dawn came again, I felt older than my years. My reflection in a store window confirmed it. My face was unshaven, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped. I barely recognized myself. Later that morning, as I shuffled through downtown, I froze. Across the street, a group of teenagers laughed near a bus stop, and among them, my son, David. His hair, his stance, the way he tilted his head. I knew it was him. My heart leapt. I started forward, then stopped. What if I was wrong? What if I was right? He looked up, eyes scanning the street. For a split second, our gazes almost met. I raised my hand, trembling. But before I could call out, he turned away, laughing at something his friend said. The bus arrived. He climbed on without seeing me, or maybe he had seen me and chose not to. I stood frozen on the sidewalk long after the bus left, the crowd dispersing. The emptiness pressed harder than hunger, colder than the night air. In that moment, I wasn't just invisible to strangers. I was invisible to my own blood. The park became my refuge, though refuge is the wrong word. A bench under a dying oak tree doesn't protect you from cold or hunger, but it gave me space to sit, to think, to remember. And remembering, I learned, could be both salvation and torture. I sat there for hours, my bag at my feet, watching shadows lengthen across the grass. Kids played tag, their laughter ringing in the air, a sound that once filled my own yard. Parents scrolled through phones or called out reminders. Be careful, stay close. I remembered shouting those same warnings, my voice laced with both love and exasperation. Sometimes I closed my eyes and let the memories play like a film reel. Emily's fourth birthday, the way her frosting-smeared smile lit up the whole kitchen. David's first baseball game, the crack of the bat, his proud grin when he reached first base. Laura standing on the porch, waving as I pulled out of the driveway with tools rattling in the back of the truck. They were ordinary moments, small and unremarkable to anyone else. But to me, they were the substance of a life I had built and lost. At night, the park grew silent. Street lamps buzzed, casting pale light that stretched long shadows across the grass. I lay back on the bench, staring up at the branches, and imagined the stars I couldn't see through the glow of the city. I whispered names into the darkness. Emily, David, Laura, hoping the night would carry them back somehow. But the only answer was wind rustling, dry leaves. One evening, as I sat with my head bowed, a boy's laughter carried on the air, sharp and clear. My eyes shot open. For one dizzy moment, I was certain it was David. The same pitch, the same unguarded joy. I rose quickly, scanning the playground. But it was another boy, chasing another father, their shadows stretching long in the fading light. My heart sank. Reality returned like a punch. Memories didn't just haunt me, they played tricks. I'd catch glimpses of Laura's face in the crowd, Emily's hair in a passing child, David's walk in a stranger. Each time my chest tightened, hope flared, and then it collapsed, leaving me emptier than before. Shadows of the past were everywhere, reminding me of what I had been, what I had lost, and what I would never regain. I carried a photograph in my bag, the one I had saved from the house. Ocean City, the summer sun turning the sand gold. Emily holding her kite, David with salt on his cheeks, Laura in sunglasses, smiling. I stared at it often, tracing their faces with my finger. The photo was worn, corners bent, colors fading. But the ache it stirred was as sharp as the day it was taken. One night, as I sat beneath the oak, a man stopped near the bench. He was middle-aged with a baseball cap pulled low. He eyed me for a long moment before asking, "You all right, buddy?" The word again, buddy. I hated it. Still I nodded. "I'm fine." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Tough times," he said before walking on. His casual pity stung more than insults ever could. It reminded me that I was no longer a man with stories worth hearing, just another faceless figure in the park. Sleep never came easy. When it did, dreams were cruel. I dreamed of home, Laura cooking dinner, Emily humming to herself, David setting the table. I dreamed of laughter echoing through the halls. Then I'd wake to the creak of the bench, the sting of the night air, and the gnawing truth. It was all gone. One morning I awoke to the sound of birds in the tree above. For a moment I thought I was back in my bed, sunlight pouring in, life as it once was. But when I opened my eyes, the branches above me framed not comfort, but emptiness. I sat up slowly, my back aching, my throat dry. I tried to remind myself that memories were gifts, proof that I had once lived a life worth remembering. But more often they felt like chains, pulling me backward, keeping me tethered to what I could never return to. As I shuffled through the park that afternoon, I caught sight of a group of fathers with their kids. They were throwing a football, shouting encouragement, cheering when the ball was caught. I stopped in my tracks. For a moment, I could almost feel the weight of the ball in my hands. Hear David's laugh as he ran to catch it. My throat tightened, eyes burning. I wanted to step forward, to join, to shout. That used to be me. But my feet stayed planted, heavy with shame. The truth hit me hard then, sharper than hunger or cold. I wasn't just invisible to strangers. I was a ghost in my own memories. My children lived on in photographs and dreams while I drifted in the shadows, half alive, half forgotten. That night, lying on the bench, I clutched the photo of Ocean City close to my chest. I whispered their names into the darkness until exhaustion pulled me under. My last thought before sleep was a plea I knew would go unanswered. Don't forget me. The park had become routine. Mornings meant stretching stiff muscles on the bench. Afternoons meant wandering the city for scraps or a kind word. Nights meant battling cold and fear, But routine can be broken in an instant, and one cruel encounter can scar deeper than weeks of hunger. It was a Saturday night when it happened. The city buzzed with life, music spilling from bars, cars honking, couples laughing as they spilled onto the sidewalks. I sat near the edge of the park, clutching the worn duffel bag that held all I owned. My Ocean City photo was tucked safely inside, folded into a shirt pocket. I was tired, hungry, and invisible, as usual. Until a group of young men decided I wasn't invisible anymore. They stumbled toward me, laughter already sharp with the edge of alcohol. One pointed, "Look at him. Old guy's camping out like he owns the place." Another snorted, "Nah, he's just trash. City should clean this up." Their words sliced through me. I kept my eyes down, hoping they'd pass. But cruelty loves attention. One of them kicked at my bag. "What do you got in here, old man? Beer? Money?" His foot hit hard, and I lunged to grab it, my heart racing. "Please," I whispered, "it's just clothes." That only made them laugh louder. "Clothes? You think anyone cares about your rags?" Another grabbed the strap and yanked. I held on, desperation stronger than pride. My whole life, what little was left, was in that bag. They pulled harder. I felt my body jerk forward, my knees scraping the pavement. My hands burned as I clung to the strap. "Stop," I croaked, but my voice was weak. One of them leaned close, his breath hot with beer. "You're worthless," he spat. "Nobody cares if you live or die out here." The words struck harder than the shove that followed. My back slammed into the bench, my head rang. For a moment, I thought they'd take everything. But then a car horn blared nearby, startling them. "Let's go," one muttered, and they staggered off, still laughing. I sat frozen, clutching my bag, my chest heaving. My hands shook so badly I couldn't untie the strap from my wrist. Tears blurred my vision, hot and shameful. I had been mocked before, ignored countless times, but never stripped so bare. Their words echoed louder than their footsteps. Worthless. Nobody cares. I wanted to believe it wasn't true, that somewhere someone still cared. But in that moment, alone on the cold ground, I wasn't sure. A security guard passed later, flashlight sweeping the park. He paused when he saw me, his frown deep. "You can't sleep here," he said. His tone was flat, tired, like I was one more item on a long list of problems. "I wasn't sleeping," I lied, my voice hoarse. "Just sitting." He studied me for a moment, then moved on without another word. No offer of help, no concern, just another reminder that I was less a man than a nuisance. When the park emptied, again when I leaned back against the bench, my body aching. The city felt louder than ever. Sirens wailing, engines roaring, laughter drifting from bars. The world was alive, but I was not part of it. I pulled the photo from my bag, smoothing its bent corners. Emily's kite, David's grin, Laura's smile. For a moment, I let myself pretend they were still mine, that they still loved me. But then the cruel words returned. Worthless. Nobody cares. And the photo blurred with my tears. The night dragged on. Every sound made me flinch. I clutched my bag tighter, afraid they would return. Afraid that next time they wouldn't just take my belongings. They'd take what little spirit I had left. As dawn broke, pale and cold, I rose stiffly from the bench. My knees throbbed where they had scraped the pavement. My back ached from the shove. But worse than the pain was the emptiness inside. The echo of voices that had cut deeper than fists ever could. I walked slowly through the waking streets, head down. A woman jogged past, earbuds in, not sparing me a glance. A man in a suit stepped wide, as if my shadow might stain his polished shoes. I no longer needed to be invisible. I wished I could be. Because when people did see me, it was only to remind me how far I had fallen. That encounter burned itself into me. The cruelty, the laughter, the sting of being seen only as trash. I realized then that hunger and cold might weaken the body, but words, cruel, careless words, could hollow out the soul, and mine was already half empty. After that night in the park, fear sat heavy in my chest. Every laugh sounded like mockery. Every footstep behind me felt like a threat. I walked with my bag clutched tight, eyes down, bracing for the next cruel encounter. Days blurred, Cold mornings, long afternoons wandering the streets, empty nights on benches. I was hollow, more shadow than man. Then, in the middle of all that darkness, something unexpected happened. It was late afternoon when I stumbled into a small diner on Broad Street. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. The smell of frying onions and coffee drifting through the door was torture enough. I lingered by the entrance, hoping for scraps when customers left. My stomach clenched, reminding me I hadn't eaten since the crust of bread I'd found the day before. A waitress came out to shake off a rug. She was middle-aged, her hair pulled into a messy bun, lines of fatigue around her eyes. She glanced at me, and I braced myself for the usual look of suspicion or pity. But instead, she said softly, "Hungry?" The word stunned me. For a moment, I couldn't answer. No one had asked me that in weeks, not as a question, not with care. I nodded slowly. "Wait here," she said. She disappeared inside, then returned with a paper bag and a steaming cup. "Turkey sandwich and hot coffee. It's not much, but it'll fill you soon." My throat tightened. I tried to speak, but the words tangled. "Thank you," I whispered. She smiled faintly, already turning back toward the diner, as if kindness was routine for her. I sat on the curb, unwrapped the sandwich, and ate like a starving man, which of course I was. The bread was soft, the turkey thick, the lettuce crisp. Tears stung my eyes with every bite. The coffee burned my tongue, but I welcomed the pain. It reminded me I was alive. That small act, a sandwich and coffee, felt like a miracle. It wasn't just food, it was acknowledgement. Proof that I wasn't entirely invisible. The next day, I lingered near the diner again, not out of expectation, but out of hope. The same waitress spotted me. She waved. "Back again?" I almost apologized, explained I wasn't begging. But she shook her head. "Don't worry, I'll see what I can do." Minutes later, she handed me another bag. This time it was soup in a roll. "What's your name?" she asked. "Michael," I said quietly. My voice cracked on my own name, as if I'd forgotten how it sounded. "Well, Michael, I'm Carol. If you're around, I'll make sure you don't go hungry. Deal?" I nodded, swallowing hard. It wasn't just the food. It was being called by my name, as if I were human again. Over the next week, Carol became a lifeline. She'd slip me leftovers at the end of her shift, sometimes a slice of pie, sometimes just a roll. Each time she'd ask simple questions. "How are you holding up?" or "Getting any sleep?" Her tone wasn't judgmental, just concerned. That alone was rare enough to feel like a gift. One evening, as she handed me a bag, she said, "You remind me of my brother. He had a rough patch years ago. Made it through, though. You will too." Her faith shook me. I had none left in myself, but hearing it from her sparked something small, a flicker in the ashes. Not everyone in the diner was kind. A customer once muttered, "Why feed the bums? They'll never change." Carol snapped back, "Compassion's not wasted." The man rolled his eyes, but she stood firm. I sat outside listening, my heart pounding with gratitude. Someone had defended me when I couldn't defend myself. That night, as I lay on the bench with the photo of my family pressed to my chest, I thought about Carol's words. Maybe compassion wasn't wasted. Maybe I wasn't wasted either. For the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. It wasn't happiness. Not yet. But it was the faint outline of hope, fragile and trembling. One evening, as she handed me a bag with half a chicken dinner, Carol leaned closer and whispered, "There's a shelter on Walnut Street. They're decent people. Tell them I sent you. They'll give you a bed." A bed. The word itself was almost too much. I stared at her, disbelieving. She smiled gently. "It's not much, but it's better than concrete. Go tomorrow. Promise me." I promised. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind spun with the idea of a mattress, a pillow, a roof. The cruel laughter of the men in the park still echoed in my memory, but Carol's voice was louder now. "You'll make it through." By morning, my decision was made. I would go to the shelter. For once, I wasn't moving towards survival alone. A stranger's kindness had pointed me to something more. The morning after Carol told me about the shelter, I walked to Walnut Street with a mix of fear and fragile hope. The city was waking around me, buses sighing at stops, shopkeepers rolling up shutters. But my mind was fixed on the promise of a bed. My legs trembled with every step, half from exhaustion, half from doubt. What if they turned me away? What if I wasn't welcome? The shelter stood in an old brick building with a faded sign, Hope Haven. The name felt almost cruel in its optimism. I hesitated at the entrance, clutching my bag like a lifeline. Through the doorway, I could smell disinfectant and faint traces of soup. I almost turned back, but Carol's words echoed, "Tell them I sent you." Inside, a woman with gray hair sat at a folding table, a clipboard in hand. She looked up, her eyes tired but kind. "First time here?" I nodded. My throat was too dry to speak. "Name?" "Michael." My voice cracked, but she didn't flinch. She scribbled it down. "Carol from the diner told me I could come." At the mention of Carol, the woman's mouth curved into a small smile. "Then you're in good hands. Follow me." She led me down a hallway that smelled of bleach and soap. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. At the end was a room lined with narrow beds, each with a thin mattress and a folded blanket. To anyone else, it might have looked stark, but to me, it looked like salvation. "This one's yours," she said, pointing to a bed near the corner. I set my bag down carefully, almost reverently. My hands shook as I ran them over the blanket. It was rough, but it was clean. The mattress sagged, but it was soft compared to concrete. For the first time in months, I had something resembling a home. That night, I lay on my back staring at the ceiling. Around me, other men snored, coughed, shifted in their sleep. The air was heavy with the smell of sweat and detergent, yet my chest felt lighter. I pulled the blanket over me and whispered, "Thank you, Carol," before drifting into the deepest sleep I'd had in months. The next morning I woke not to cold pavement, but to the sound of voices and the smell of oatmeal. Volunteers ladled bowls into waiting hands. I joined the line, feeling awkward, exposed. But when the warm bowl was placed in my hands, I nearly cried. The oats were plain, the sugar scarce, but it tasted like hope. Over the next days, I learned the rhythm of the shelter. Chores in the morning, sweeping, wiping tables, helping unload boxes. Afternoons free to search for work or simply rest. Evenings brought another meal, often soup and bread, but always served with a smile. The other men shared their stories in fragments. A veteran who lost his family after the war. A factory worker injured on the wall, left behind by the system, a man younger than me, undone by addiction. Their stories echoed mine in different keys: loss, struggle, survival. For the first time, I didn't feel alone in my suffering. One evening, as I sat at a table staring into a bowl of soup, the gray-haired woman, whose name I learned was Margaret, sat across from me. "You've been quiet," she said. I shrugged. Words still felt dangerous, like they might unravel me. "You're more than what you've lost, Michael," she said gently. "Don't forget that." Her words stayed with me. I carried them like a stone in my pocket, heavy but grounding. Days turned to weeks. I gained a little strength, a little color in my cheeks. Carol still slipped me sandwiches when she could, smiling as if she knew I was healing. At the shelter, I started helping more, fixing a broken chair, tightening loose hinges, small repairs with the tools of my trade. For a few moments, hammer in hand, I felt like myself again. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard rain tapping against the windows. I thought about where I would have been without Carol's kindness, without Margaret's steady presence. The memory of cold concrete and cruel laughter was still fresh, but it no longer defined me entirely. I pulled the Ocean City photo from my bag and studied it under the dim light. Emily's kite soared high, David's grin stretched wide, Laura's smile caught in the sun. My heart ached, but for the first time the ache was mixed with something else. A fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't forgotten forever. I whispered into the dark, not to the photo, but to the future. "I'm still here." It wasn't victory, it wasn't redemption, but it was a beginning. Life at Hope Haven became a rhythm. Sweep the floor in the morning, eat oatmeal at breakfast, listen to the city hum outside the windows. It wasn't the life I'd once built, but it was stability of a sort. My body grew stronger with regular meals, and my hands itched to fix things again. Loose screws, squeaky doors, broken chairs. I found purpose in small repairs. For a few minutes each day, I wasn't just a man scraping by. I was Michael, the builder, the father, the man who once made homes. But my heart still lived outside those walls, aching for the family I'd lost. Every night I pulled out the Ocean City photo. I traced Emily's kite, David's grin, Laura's smile. I whispered their names like a prayer. Don't forget me. Please don't forget me. Then one evening the prayer seemed to find an answer. It was a Thursday, just after dinner. Rain drizzled against the windows, the world gray and tired. I sat near the entrance, mending a loose strap on my duffel bag. The door creaked open, letting in a gust of wet air. I looked up and froze. Emily. She was taller now, her face older, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. But I knew her. A father always knows. She stepped in cautiously, scanning the room. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming again, one of those cruel tricks where memory wore the mask of reality. But when her eyes landed on me, white and shimmering, I knew it was real. Dad? Her voice was soft, uncertain, but it carried across the room like a shout. The bag slipped from my hands. I stood slowly, my knees trembling. Emily? My voice cracked, heavy with disbelief. She rushed forward, stopping just short of me, as if afraid I might vanish. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't know. I didn't know you were here. I wanted to say 1,000 things, how I missed her, how I thought of her every day, how sorry I was. But all that came out was, you came. She nodded quickly, wiping her cheeks. Mom told us that you were gone. But last week I heard someone mention a man fixing things at the shelter. I thought, maybe. Her words tangled in sobs. I reached out slowly, afraid she might pull away, but she didn't. She fell into my arms, and I held her tight, clutching her as if letting go would break me forever. Her hair smelled faintly of rain and shampoo. She whispered, I'm sorry, Dad. I should have looked for you sooner. Tears poured down my face, hot and unashamed. You're here now, I whispered. That's enough. We sat together on one of the benches. She told me about school, about David, about how Laura had struggled too, though pride kept her silent. David, he doesn't want to talk about it, she admitted, but I know he misses you. Hearing my son's name from her lips was like sunlight breaking through clouds. He missed me. Even if he couldn't say it, even if he couldn't face me yet, a piece of me still lived in him. Other men in the shelter glanced at us, some smiling faintly, some looking away to give us privacy. Margaret, the gray-haired woman, simply nodded from across the room, as if she'd seen reunions before and knew their fragile weight. Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a small wrapped parcel. It's not much, she said shyly, pressing it into my hands. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a new flannel shirt, cheap but warm, soft, and chosen with love. My throat tightened. I slipped it on immediately, and for the first time in months, I felt human again. Not just surviving, but cared for. As night fell, Emily reluctantly stood. I have to go home, Dad, but I'll come back. I promise. I wanted to beg her not to leave, to keep her there forever, but I knew promises mattered, and I trusted hers. I squeezed her hand. I'll be here. She hesitated, then whispered, maybe one day you can come home too. The words echoed long after she left, brighter than any hope I dared to hold. That night, lying on my cot, I stared at the ceiling with tears drying on my cheeks. The Ocean City photo lay beside me, but for once it wasn't my only connection to the past. I had touched my daughter's hand. I had heard her call me Dad. I wasn't forgotten after all. The cruelty, the hunger, the nights on cold concrete, they still scarred me. But now, alongside the scars, there was something else, the seed of a future. A fragile, trembling hope that maybe redemption didn't always roar in like a storm. Sometimes it crept in softly, carried by the voice of your child saying your name. As sleep pulled me under, I whispered into the darkness, not a plea, but a truth. I am still a father, and I am still here.